chances are you have a pocket knife, right? I think growing up, this is a rite of passage for just about everybody to someday get their very own pocket knife. And like many of us, this has been our trusted tool when we're out there on our outdoor adventures. Well, if you're new to bushcraft, what you're going to quickly learn is that a pocket knife just doesn't quite do it for all of your needs. So today, we're going to break down the 4 key elements to look for when choosing a bushcraft knife. And we're going to dive into how to determine if the knife is the perfect knife for your individual needs. For today's discussion, we're going to be looking at the BeaverCraft Tools BSH5 Shadow. Now this is their carbon steel compact bushcraft knife. A couple months ago, the folks at BeaverCraft Tools reached out to me and asked if I'd like to try out some of their products. And I was absolutely ecstatic because up until recently, I had been relying on that handy dandy pocket knife. And quite honestly, it wasn't holding up to the rigors of what I had been putting it through. So I knew that it was time for me to make that change. And I just hadn't quite made that final step. So thank you so much to the folks at BeaverCraft Tools. This has been an awesome knife, and we're going to use it to break down today the basic 4 elements of what you need to look at when you're purchasing your next bushcraft knife. So the 4 elements that we want to look at are the blade, the tang, the spine, and the handle. Identifying these 4 key elements on your knife will be instrumental in making sure that you choose the right knife. Unlike a traditional pocket knife, a bushcraft knife is going to have a fixed blade. And that's going to give it that extra strength and durability for the rigors we're going to put it through in the field. Now, your blades come in 2 different types of metal, stainless steel or a high carbon. Both are great options, but have their pros and cons. A stainless steel blade is going to be far less likely to rust or corrode over time in the field, whereas a high carbon blade is going to be easier to sharpen and much easier to maintain. However, you do have to make sure your high carbon blades are oiled regularly to avoid any corrosion. Now, the BeaverCraft Shadow has fixed that problem by adding a bluing effect with an oxidization, which prevents from rust and corrosion. You're also going to want to look for the strength of the metal. Now this blade is a 1066 high carbon steel, which means it's virtually indestructible. Now another aspect of the blade you're going to want to look at is the grind. And that's exactly what it sounds like. That is, how did they grind the blade to its original shape in the manufacturing process? Now, there are a couple of different options out there for the grind as well, but the 2 most popular would be the Scandinavian or the Scandi grind or the flat grind. And those are very similar in style, but it comes down to the technique used for cutting the metal down. Both of them have great options out there, and you'll just want to choose your preference. Now, the Shadow here actually used what they call a hollow grind, and that's actually using wheels that come together and grind out a smooth, tapered end on the blade. It puts an excellent razor-sharp edge on the blade, and it's a lot easier to field sharpen this way as well. Okay, the next element we're going to want to look at is the tang. And the tang is the portion of the blade that follows through into the handle of the knife itself. There are 2 options of bushcraft blade tangs to look at: the partial tang and the full tang. Now the Shadow uses a full tang construction, which basically means it's one solid piece of steel that runs through the entire length of the handle, giving it an extra strength and durability. Right, so moving on to the spine. The spine is the back edge of the blade of your knife. Now, in order to be a good bushcraft knife, you're probably going to want to be able to use it to start a fire, meaning to strike it against a fairing rod. For that, you're going to need a nice, clean, sharp 90-degree angle on your spine. Now, there are a lot of different knife options out there. A lot of them are putting little grooves in the edge, which is for a thumb grip. What I found is that just gets in the way if you're trying to use a fairing rod. So I wanted a nice, smooth, elongated spine that runs the entire length of the blade. And this Shadow, for example, has a 90-degree spine all the way to the tip of the blade. So essentially, the entire length of this blade can be used for fire starting, or for shaving wood if you're trying to get some fine resin out of maybe some fat wood. Those are the 4 basic elements that make up a bushcraft knife. Yes, you can go down that rabbit hole of data and details on each one of those 4 elements, but this is a high-level idea for what you need to look for when you're choosing your next blade. For me, I was looking for the perfect camp knife. I wanted to be able to process wood, start a fire, and maybe chop up some vegetables for a stew. And thanks to the folks at BeaverCraft Tools, I've got just the right blade. If you're curious about their products, I'll leave a link in the description that gives you a discount code. And I'm curious, leave me some comments and let me know what blades are you looking at specifically, or some other ideas or tips and tricks that you might have on choosing the right bushcraft knife. Thank you so much, folks. We'll see you next time.